Hi, everybody.
And
Sorry for the delay. Margie's off today, and since it's a special meeting, we had a little confusion over host privileges. So I was able to get into her account and get signed in here. So I'm not Margie, obviously.
And did you lose the bet and cut off your hair?
No, man, this is a cool haircut.
I like it. Don't get me wrong.
Thanks. No, I'm historically a short hair guy, but I just had my hair long for various reasons for the year that I've been here so far. You just have never seen me with short hair. This is more typical of my haircut.
Rock on.
Thanks. Appreciate it. All right, so we'll give everyone a minute to join in here. I just wanted to let you know why it said Margie and not Brandon. Actually, I can change that.
okay. Brandon, how are you?
Pretty good. Eric, how are you doing?
Thanks.
Good.
Yeah.
I haven't heard from anyone that they weren't going to be attending today's meeting. I don't know if you have, Mr. Chair.
In terms of the board?
Correct. Yeah.
Most of the board was on the tour, so.
Okay. Was there anyone on the board that was not on the tour?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, great.
So we're missing Jordan's on. Catherine's on. We're missing Carol and Kathy.
Correct.
Carol. I think. There's Carol. We're missing Kathy. Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair, I just sent board member Pomeroy a quick message to make sure she's not having issues getting on.
Okay, so give it another couple minutes.
Yeah, if you'd like to. I mean, you have a quorum, so you could proceed, but just giving you an update.
Give her one more minute and then we'll start. We don't hear from her. See, no response yet. Brandon?
No, sir.
Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and then call the meeting to order. Our special City of Carmel-by-the-Sea's Historic Resources Board special meeting for Monday, January 24th. Roll call, please.
Board Member Croman,
Here.
Board Member Galtieri,
Here.
Board Member Hall,
Here.
Board Member Pomeroy is absent, and Chair Board Member Dyer.
Here.
All right, Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. We'll go on to next to public appearances. Anyone wishing to address the board on items that are not on the agenda may do so now.
Not seeing anyone raise their hand or unmute themselves, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. And this time we have just our November 15th, 2021 regular meeting minutes to be adopted. Is there any comments or edits from the board on the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Okay. Can we have all the roll call, please, on that?
Certainly. Board Member Croman,
Yes.
Board Member Galtieri,
I was not at the meeting, so I will abstain.
thank you. Board Member Hall,
Yes.
Board Member Pomeroy is absent, and Chair Board Member Dyer.
Yes, so minutes are adopted. And going on to orders of business now, the first item on the agenda is HE 21374, Colossus, consideration of adding an individual property located at 4th Avenue to northeast of Lobel Street in the single-family residential zoning district to the Carmel Inventory of Historic Resources. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this process was initiated when the applicant submitted an application for a preliminary site assessment. As part of the preliminary site assessment application process, a historic evaluation is completed. So when the filing of a preliminary site assessment, an initial assessment of historic significance shall be conducted to determine whether the property may have historic potential sufficient to warrant conducting an intensive survey. So staff did conduct that initial review and determined that a definitive determination of an eligibility or ineligibility could not be made. And when that is the case, the code requires that an intensive survey be prepared by a qualified professional. Staff retained the services of Margaret Clovis, a contracted historic consultant, to prepare the intensive survey, and determined that the property is eligible for listing as an individual resource. The applicant disagrees with the conclusions of that evaluation, specifically that the building is architecturally significant, and has requested the Historic Resources Board consider the decision to list the property on the historic inventory. So the phase 1 evaluation found that the Coughlin House was constructed in 1958, and it is in the ranch style of architecture. The character defining features are the cross-gabled low-pitch roof with moderate eave overhang, shingled siding, attached one-car garage, all original fenestration, and partial width porch with simple wood supports. Minimal alterations have occurred to the residence. In 1971, there was a studio addition, and in 2016, the residence was re-roofed. So when determining eligibility, there are 4 criteria. A, it should be representative of at least one theme in the historic context statement, shall retain substantial integrity, should be at least 50 years old, and shall meet at least one of the 4 criteria listed on the right side of the screen. So for item A, should be representative of at least one theme included in the historic context statement. The context statement is organized into 5 broad themes: prehistory and Hispanic settlement, economic development, government, civic and social institutions, architectural development, and the development of arts and culture. So the phase 1 found that it is representative of the theme of architectural development. Within this theme, significant single-family residences are those that relate to Carmel's architectural chronology as described in section 5.4. This is from the historic context statement. And then section 5.4 identifies ranch as one of the modern styles of architecture post-war, and then also identifies the characteristics of the ranch style residence, which is significant between 1935 and 1975. So again, this is representative of the theme of architectural development. Criteria B shall retain substantial integrity. The phase 1 evaluation found that it's retained a high degree of integrity. There was a small studio addition added to the rear in 1971. However, it has not affected the overall design, including the building's location, design setting, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association, all of which are evaluated when determining integrity. So for the purposes of this review, the house is substantially intact. Item C should be at least 50 years old. It was constructed in 1958 and is therefore 64 years old. And then for D, shall meet at least one of the following 4 criteria for listing as a primary or local resource. So the phase 1 found that it meets criteria number 3, embodies the distinctive characteristics of a type, period, region, or method of construction, or represents the work of a master, an important creative individual, or possesses high artistic values. And then an additional qualifier under criteria 3, it needs to meet one of the 4 qualifiers also listed on the right. So in this case, it is a good example of an architectural style or type of construction recognized as significant in the historic context statement. So if we go back to this slide, for significant architectural styles, section 5.4 identifies the ranch style as a significant style of architecture identified in the context statement. So with that, staff recommends the Historic Resource Board adopt a resolution adding an individual property to the Carmel inventory of historic resources. Also, as an alternative, if you determine that it's ineligible for listing, the board should adopt specific findings identifying why the site is ineligible for listing, and also make specific findings regarding the determination of ineligibility. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions of Evan from the board? Evan, do you have a counting of all the different ranch style houses that are on the inventory as presently?
I do. There's 2. Interestingly enough, they were constructed before the period of significance, but we currently have 2 resources that are identified in the ranch style.
That's in addition to this, Evan?
Correct. So this, if you choose to list this, this would be number 3.
Okay, and let's see. We don't have you don't have that available for us to look at as a comparison.
I can pull it up. It'll just take me a minute.
That'd be great. Just to give some context to the decision.
Is there a representative that's going to speak on behalf of the current owner?
I'll go ahead and open the, I see Adam here. Maybe Adam would want to, I'm not sure if he's representing the owner or not, but.
Sure, yes, this is Adam Jesselnick, architect.
Yeah. Okay, Adam, don't worry, I'll open the public hearing. He's just asking if are you representing the owner in this one?
I will be, yes.
Okay, thank you. We'll open the public hearing shortly.
Sorry, I'm just making sure I have the right ones open before I share them. So unfortunately, they aren't the greatest photos. This is the, looking for the name. I don't see a name jumping out at me. But again, right here, you can see it's identified as a California ranch style. It is 4 Southwest and 9th on Carmelo. And it is significant. I believe this was a Comstock construction.
And the date?
The date on that one is 1939, Comstock, the Samuel M. Haskins House, significant under criteria 2 and 3, which I believe 2 is associations with a person, which would be Comstock in this case, and then 3 for architecture. And then this other one, again, not a great photograph. I apologize for that.
That's the greenhouse studio, isn't it?
In green, yeah.
Which I'm not sure is a ranch.
It's the F.A. Coleman House, constructed in 1907.
Oh, that's the greenhouse.
Yeah, it's a green studio. I don't think that would be considered ranch, but
Let me see.
I know it's kind of difficult to cross-reference all these things.
Craftsman.
Let me make sure I had the right one open. Five, 7, 9, 11. Five, 7, 9, 11. You know what? I did open the wrong one. I apologize. Five, 7. Okay, here it is. So this one was constructed in 1907, the F.A. Coleman House, significant for criteria number 3, which is architecture.
And that had an addition, didn't it? I think.
You can
Not
check.
that that's critical for what we're talking about, but that's,
Yeah, so this is the construction history. Constructed in 1907, additions in 1926, 1929, 1936, and add 2-story to the west post 1990.
I think that property probably has more significance because of its owners or the Denny Watrous connection. At least looking at it from the way you put it up.
okay.
Yeah, so that one.
Thank you for bringing those up, though. Let's see, is there any other questions of Evan from the board?
I have a question.
Sure, Kathy.
Is the attached garage in front what differentiates it as a ranch compared to a cottage or some other one-story house?
No, the attached garage is just identified as a character defining feature of it. When you're looking at a ranch style residence, and I'll share my screen one more time. This bottom paragraph right in here is what describes the characteristics of a ranch style residence. So not necessarily the attached garage. However, it has been identified as character defining for this specific residence.
Okay.
have a question too. Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. Often, Evan, we've come across the criterion, other better examples of style, so that something is not qualified as historic. I didn't see that in your write-up. Where does that fall, and would it be appropriate possibly here?
So I believe what you're referring to is from our preliminary determination of ineligibility.
Uh-huh.
And there's a criteria on there that says there are better examples of the builder's work in the city.
Yeah.
So this builder is not listed as a significant builder. So in my opinion, I don't think this would be applicable. In terms of what you need for architecture under this criteria, under criteria 3, it just needs to be a good example of an architectural style or type of construction recognized as significant in the context statement.
Got you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other questions of Evan? Or do you have anything else you'd like to mention, Evan, before we open the public hearing?
No, I'm available for questions as they come up, though.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, I'll open the public hearing. Is the applicant or applicant's representative here to address the board? Adam mentioned he's here.
Yes, hello. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you. So I'm Adam Jesselnick. I was hired by the owners of this property to take a look at possible design additions for this house. We studied quite a few options. We're actually still studying options on that front as far as the design potential. But there's a couple things, I'll keep my comments brief, but there are a couple things that I wanted to highlight that, you know, I felt were may have been missed or glossed over in Meg's report. You know, one key one, I don't know, Evan, if it's possible to pull up a photograph of the front of the house showing the porch. Are we able to do that? So you'll notice on the existing plans that the front porch is actually absent from those plans. So the 3 posts and that front porch roof extension, those are actually alterations. I'm not sure what they date to because I don't believe they appear on anything in the city file, but it certainly was a modification, and it's really noticeable, especially at the front door, because there's a change in the roof eave where the eave of that porch goes underneath the roof eave of the original house. I think it's also probable that there were other windows and doors that have been modified or added to this house, as well as gutters and the re-roof and the pretty substantial addition to the back of the house, which you know, created alterations to the interior of the house and the floor plan as well. So I just wanted to bring those up in my comments. And then the other comment, just generally, you know, I of course live here and work in town and walk around the neighborhoods quite a bit, as I know you all do. And I think, you know, it's notable that this house in particular was built by a firm that built hundreds of homes around the peninsula. And I think, you know, it's fair to say that we've all seen probably hundreds of homes that look like this house. And I'm all for, you know, preserving, you know, really exemplary examples of a particular style, because I think that it's part of what makes Carmel and its history of architecture so fascinating and such a great place for somebody like me to work. But when I first looked at this house, you know, there certainly was nothing remarkable to me about the character of the house. You know, the fenestration is irregular. It's, you know, there's really no symmetry. The H-shaped plan is kind of offset, you know, which you could see when you look at the roof plan. The garage almost looks like an afterthought. And then, you know, of course, the addition in the back, which was sort of a really unfortunate part of the house that we hope to fully correct with any future remodel work. So those were my observations. Again, I do believe that there are certainly some ranch homes throughout the city that merit being listed. I think it was great that we were able to pull up those two that have significance for their either their designer builders or for their residents. But neither of those criteria apply here. And I think that in terms of it being an unaltered, really fine and pristine example of the ranch style, I think that we could all go out and find several dozen houses that would be a better fit for that category. So for those reasons, with all respect to Meg Clovis and her reporting and Evan and his fine work on the report, the owners and myself both agree that this is not a house that we feel should be listed. And we appreciate your input and insight and comments, and I'm available to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it. Any questions of Adam?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I could ask Adam a question. You referred to other windows and doors that might have been added. Are these that you believe have been added on the front elevation, Adam?
Sorry, no, more on the sides and the rear elevation.
So except for the 3 posts and the extension of the porch, would you say that the front elevation that the public sees is original?
I would say based on the information we have, yes, it's consistent with the original plans.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions of Mr. Jesselnick from the board? Okay, anyone else in the public wishing to address the board on this item may do so now. Okay, I see none and hear none, so I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for comment and a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to start first, if I may. I don't think a house should be disqualified because there were hundreds of others done in the same fashion. In the 50s, with the work that Cliff May did through Sunset Magazine, there are places all over the state that would have representative examples of the ranch style. I think Carmel's problem is that our historic context statement does refer to the style as a significant style, but it doesn't have next to no representative examples of what would be a good ranch style. And with the original fenestration that Meg Clovis identifies, I think even though the porch has been added or in some way changed, you can see straight through it to see the original house that was built by one of the early physicians in town who I don't know where his original house was, but I do know that his offices were on San Carlos and 6th. He operated on Carmel residence at the Peninsula Community Hospital out on the outskirts of town, not far from this house. And I think that what struck me about Ms. Clovis's review, her intensive survey, was the statement that she made that this property is representative of the architectural chronology that we're hoping to achieve through our historic context statement. And by that, I mean that every decade has certain examples of houses, whether they're simple or grand and really unique, but every decade should show some representative examples of good architecture. And this one just happens to fall in the 1950s style that was common to many homes in that period. So to me, it is a good example of the ranch style. And I think it would qualify under criterion 3. And it was the home of an early physician, not the earliest one perhaps, but I think it's retained its physical integrity and it's historic. It can still be added to, I would say, in the back as the applicants are considering. But to just throw it out and say, well, it's too typical, it doesn't represent anything, I think would be an error.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Who would like to go next on the board?
I guess I will go next. This is not a style that I would normally think of as ideal for historic status. However, I think it's probably the first. Looking at the other two, this one really, I think, embodies that era and that ranch style singly. And and because Meg Clovis made a case for it, and because Evan also brought us through all the criteria required, it's pretty clear that it qualifies as historic, no matter what I think. So I would also consider this a good example of ranch style in Carmel.
Mr. Chairman, I kind of go along with Board Member Hall when I don't really think of this as a typical style, but if you look at the ones that Evan showed us, the other two that are in town too, this one is the one that seems to fall most categorically in the timeline of the style, where the other ones seem to be earlier. Not that it rules them out, but I mean, this is smack dab in the post 1920s and that post Second World War era ranch style house. So I mean, I think for that reason as well, it's probably a good candidate to include in the registry.
Okay, thank you. Jordan, is anyone, I think who was else? Just me, probably.
Mr. Chair, I do want to note that Board Member Pomeroy did join just after we started this item, so she is on the call.
Yes,
as well.
Kathy, do you want to, I think you had a question, but.
Yeah, I had my question answered.
Okay.
I haven't made a survey of all of the single-story houses in the city that might qualify as a ranch-style house. Yeah, it's not something you think about with Carmel. You're more thinking about little cutesy cottages and different things. It is a ranch-style house. I just don't know if it's the best example. Is it historic just because it was built during the time frame that ranch styles were being built? It doesn't seem that special to me. It doesn't seem that special to me. I think there might be better examples.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. I'm glad Adam brought up the issue of the porch, which wasn't brought up in the in Meg's report. And I think that is a front elevation. It's changed the nature of the house from the original, so that's fairly significant to me. I see this as a humble house. It lacks some of the definitions, I think, of a California ranch, in that it doesn't really open up to patios. If you look on the backside, it's rather closed up, and I just don't see it rising to the level of significance like everyone else does, despite it being, within the middle of the period. I think with the new roof, it's lost that integrity, and I just don't see it rising to the level of significance for the historic context statement for Carmel. And there are other better examples of the ranch that were shown, despite them being slightly older. That is my take on it.
So, Mr. Chairman, you don't think this represents the style? Is that what you're saying?
I think it lacks some of the character defining elements of the style.
Okay.
It maintains some of them.
Mr. Chair, would it be okay if I just jump in with a point of clarification?
Sure.
So on the original roof plan, there is a little note right here. You can see in this area, it does reference an enclosed patio with the marking right here continuing from the eave. So it is a flat roof where the patio is, and the original plans do appear to note that that patio is original. What is not shown is the supports. This is the front elevation, but that patio is in fact referenced, or the covering is referenced on the original plans. So I just wanted to point that out.
I'm not sure that's not what it really, I don't think that necessarily signifies that, but if you look at the roof plan again,
Mm-hmm.
it's a dashed line. It shows a what is that in the word? Excavated, or what is it?
Enclosed.
Enclosed patio. But it doesn't show, if it was a solid roof, it would show as a solid roof instead of a dashed line, I think. That's the way I would interpret the plan, at least. So in any case, I think each of the board members has expressed their opinions on it. Is there a motion we can entertain, or is there any more discussion?
I mean, does the fact that it is almost completely hidden from the street elevation come into play at all? I mean, some of the properties we've looked at, we've specifically said we have to retain the wall, we have to remove the wall, we have to do other things like that. I mean, this is it's a wooden fence with a tremendous amount of, it looks like, vegetation supporting it. But does that have anything, and this is probably a general question for the board, because I don't know the answer. Is that a part of consideration as well?
It is for me, because nobody can see it anyway, even if it was designated.
I think it's a legal question, though. So Evan or Brandon, would you like to address that?
I'll give it a shot. Brandon, please hop in if I'm misspeaking. Occasionally fences and walls are designated as historic. This wasn't called out in the DPR, so I wouldn't consider it. The fence does exceed the legal height, and it's considered legal non-conforming. So if the fence were to come down in the future, it would have to be rebuilt to a compliant height.
Nailed it. Good job, Evan.
But can you, I guess the other question is, can you use a criterion that it can't be seen from the street as much because of vegetation as a way to evaluate significance?
I don't think so. We have other resources in town that can't be viewed from the street. Entire properties can be considered historic. You can have part of the rear of a house that's considered historic. We have sculptures that are located in courtyards that are historic. Just because it's not visible from the street doesn't necessarily disqualify it.
A good example, Mr. Chair, would be the Flanders Mansion.
Sure.
That's not visible from the street at all.
Well, to me, what I see is that we have some difference of opinion as to the quality, perhaps, of the structure. I think if I reviewed the staff report again and the DPR form, as well as the survey that Ms. Clovis put together for us on the DPR, it strikes me that we have a difference of opinion, because as a historic consultant who looks at the historic context statement for Carmel, it seemed pretty clear to me that Meg Clovis is saying there is a high degree of integrity, and she's saying very few exterior changes, very few, since its construction, and that it is part of, it isn't maybe the very best example, but it doesn't have to be the very best. It's a good representative example of the ranch style. That's her opinion. We paid her, we didn't, but the applicant paid her to render an objective opinion, and she's given us one. The fact that it is not changed and that it is part of the architectural chronology, that's going to be my new phrase, because I've struggled to see that each decade should be showing people who are studying the history and architecture of Carmel, each decade should show us examples of the style that we're noticing. So I still feel that it is a good example, and it may not be the best, but it doesn't have to be the best.
Okay. Catherine? Is there any other comments by board members? Mr. Jesselnick would like an opportunity to make some clarifications, so I'll go and open the public hearing for Adam again to make a couple comments. Go down, Adam.
Thanks, Chair Dyer. Yeah, there were just a couple of things that were brought up that I thought are important to clarify. So it definitely is the case that the porch was an addition. And so, you know, that's a flaw in Meg Clovis's report, because that front porch was certainly not part of the original plans. It's clear from the roof plan that there was not a porch and there were not posts. And so that's a pretty significant alteration to the front elevation that I think was missed in her report. I also wanted to note that there's it's not on the front elevation, but there is a window adjacent to the front door from bedroom 1 that faces that patio. That window as well is not shown on the original plans. So, you know, as a couple of points of clarification, just to note that the inconsistencies with the original plans and the existing house go beyond just the addition in the back and a few door and window, you know, replacements. I think that as Chair Dyer pointed out, you know, the significance of the front porch is something that should be discussed and should have been part of the record. And I also feel like, you know, the connotation of a ranch style opening into a back patio is something that is definitely missing from this design as a defining feature. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we could ask Meg Clovis to address the issues that Mr. Jesselnick brings up.
Okay, that's certainly an option, I think, because it was missed in her report. So, is there any other comments from any other board members regarding that? I mean, my basic opinion is kind of what Adam was saying, is that it does not have perfect integrity, since it has a character defining front elevation changed by the porch that's clearly not there in the plans. It doesn't have a lot of the typical elegance of some ranch houses. It's certainly not a Cliff May house, and I understand that it doesn't have to be the supreme example of the architectural style to be eligible. But I think with the loss of integrity and the plainness of the house and the lack, it is missing some of the, I think, character defining issues of the elements of the style itself, like opening up to the back and patios and things. Makes me think it's not quite deserving of the inventory, but that's my opinion. But I am certainly willing to entertain a motion from the board. If the motion is to have Meg reevaluate based on the missing piece of the roof not being part of the original design, please, I'll entertain that motion, or whatever the board would like to do at this point.
I'm really on the fence on this one, but I think Catherine's suggestion that Meg Clovis address the issues that Mr. Jesselnick has brought up might be a way for us to try and resolve this conundrum.
Agreed.
Okay. Is there a motion for that?
Mr. Chair, I would just ask, maybe perhaps we get feedback from the applicant on that, because it will cost them money to have that done, to have additional reports done by our consultant.
Even though it was a mistake in the original report, I suppose that's necessary. But okay, I will open up the public hearing. Adam, do you have a comment on that as representative to your clients and owners?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's our intent to pursue this as, to strongly be asking the HRB to consider this to not be historic. So anything to that end would be, happy to pay the fees that come up as a result of the consultant taking another look at this.
Okay. Thank you.
Changing the report to address the porch, in my opinion, would not change my mind. I don't think it's special enough to be historically significant.
And I had one more question. Just, I don't think this is significant either, but aren't the windows, most of the windows except for the sliding door, steel rather than aluminum? I noticed they were noted as aluminum in the report, but I may be incorrect in that.
Yeah, they look like steel.
Mm-hmm. I don't think that affects the significance of it, though. Okay, so is there a motion from the board? Because I think.
Can I just ask one clarifying question? I just want to make sure I hit all of the areas in question. We have questions about the porch, window material, the bedroom window that faces the porch.
I think the issue is to have Meg reevaluate based on that information. And
yes, correct. I just, if there was a specific area in question, I wanted to make sure that wasn't missed.
Sure. So I think those are the issues.
Well, I'll move to continue the item until the next meeting agenda, hopefully, and ask Ms. Clovis to evaluate the issues that have been brought up at the meeting.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Board Member Croman?
Agreed.
Board Member Galtieri?
Yes?
Board Member Hall?
Yes.
Board Member Pomeroy?
Yes.
And Chair Board Member Dyer?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. So we'll see what May comes up with after that. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is MA 21238, Verge Carmel. Consideration of recommending to City Council that the city enter into a Mills Act contract with Esperanza Carmel Commercial LLC for the historic Sundial Lodge known as Verge Carmel, located at Monteverde 2 northeast of 7th Avenue. So staff report, please.
Thank you, Chair Dyer. So before the board this afternoon is an application for a Mills Act contract for the Verge Hotel, which is on Monteverde to northeast of 7th Avenue. It's actually right next door here to City Hall. The original hotel was known as the Sundial Lodge and was designed by Albert Farr. In order to qualify for a Mills Act contract, a property must be listed both on the Carmel Inventory of Historic Resources as well as the Carmel Register. So the property was formally added to the Carmel Historic Inventory in May of 2005. That designation was recorded in October 2006. However, before that time, the hotel was added to the Carmel Register in 2003 as part of the renovations that were done at that time. So a Mills Act contract is an incentive program for historic resources. It provides a reduction in property taxes to offset the cost of rehabilitation and ongoing maintenance of a historic resource. The role of the Historic Resources Board is to consider requests for Mills Act contracts and make a recommendation to the City Council on whether to approve with conditions, or deny a request. So again, I'm going to go through, there's 5 findings that both the board and the City Council do need to make in the affirmative in order to support a Mills Act request. So finding number 1 is simply that the building is designated as a historic resource and is listed on the Carmel Register. As I just mentioned, it is located on both. Finding number 2 is that the rehabilitation, restoration, and maintenance plan is appropriate in scope and sufficient in detail to guide long-term rehabilitation, restoration, and maintenance. So some of the items included on the plan are things that are not necessarily as visible as some of the exterior renovations proposed, but things like foundation inspections and repairs are part of this maintenance plan, replacing aged piping throughout the building, as well as the HVAC system. The applicant has also included painting of the resource, also inspections of windows, the roof and the chimney, all to make sure that things, if they are deteriorating, are repaired, and that everything is in proper working order. There's some existing elements of the building that are in a state of deterioration, and these repairs are included in the rehabilitation plan. This includes some damaged rafter tails, which is, I'm going to start kind of in the top left side of this slide. So we've got some deterioration of the wood elements there that need some repairs, as well as a windowsill that is deteriorating, some cracks in the foundation, as well as some radial cracking in the plaster. There's also some weathering of the roof, which is the bottom left corner, some wood rot below some of the planter boxes, and then some water damage on one of the balconies. So repairing and keeping all of these elements in good condition would be part of this 10-year maintenance plan. So finding number 3 is that the alterations are limited to interior work and exterior rehabilitation, and that all work is completed in accordance with the Secretary's standards. So as we do with any kind of exterior modification, the applicant would be required to apply for a design review, and it would go through a review process to ensure that the Secretary's standards are adhered to in all of the restoration and maintenance work. The 4th finding is that the contract would aid in offsetting the cost of rehabilitating and maintaining the resource. So again, this program is intended to be an incentive to owners, giving them some relief in their property taxes so that money can be reinvested in rehabilitating and maintaining the historic resource. And finally, finding number 5 is that approval of the contract would represent an equitable balance of public and private interests and would not result in a substantial adverse financial impact on the city. So the city does have a policy with regards to Mills Act contracts that limits the number of contracts that we enter into to 15 over a 3-year period. In the last 3 years, the city has only entered into 1 contract. Also, staff notes that we have approximately 283 plus or minus historic resources, and we currently have a total of 10 Mills Act contracts. Also, the city would continue to receive a portion of the property taxes, although it would be obviously a smaller portion, but there would still be some tax revenue that would be gained by the city. And certainly the value in preserving the historic resource is also both a benefit to the public as well as to the owner of the property. So with that, staff finds that the findings can be made in the affirmative and recommends that the board adopt a resolution recommending that the city council enter into a Mills Act contract for the property on Monteverde to northeast of 7th, which is the L'Auberge Carmel Hotel. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Marnie. Any questions of the planner? from the board? Okay, and Marnie, could you just, I guess, reiterate, I think what was mentioned on site, which was you actually don't have the information regarding how much property tax would actually be lost to the city, and that's not information easily available?
Correct. So I have reached out to Monterey County on a couple different occasions to try to get a sense for what the differential is when the city enters into a Mills Act contract. I've not been able to obtain that information. It seems to be protected. So I don't know what they currently pay for property taxes and what that estimated reduction would be if we entered into this contract.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and can you, having reviewed the maintenance plan that was presented, I'm assuming virtually all of that, each one of those items would require some sort of permitting by the city and evaluation by planning staff to evaluate whether it's being done per the Secretary of Standards, et cetera?
Yes, certainly. There are some items that would be subject to a building permit, like the HVAC system, and probably wouldn't need review by planning. But any exterior change to the building would be reviewed by staff. And depending on whether it was a minor modification or a major modification, could also come before the board for review as well.
Okay. Any other questions, Marnie?
I have a couple questions, Marnie. So the maintenance plan has a lot of things, as we talked about, that are some are, standard annual services, some are things that are just gonna have to be done, some are things to enhance the overall structure and things like that. Once the Mills Act has been approved, assuming that it is approved, let's say in this case, how much deviation from the maintenance plan is there, and can proviso of the Mills Act be to adjust the maintenance plan?
Sure. So on an annual basis, anyone who has the benefit of a Mills Act contract will need to submit a report showing what work they've done over the course of that year. So we do monitor these maintenance plans to ensure that the work that was presented to us is being done. Certainly we can make accommodations for minor adjustments if a certain repair either is done earlier within the 10-year plan or done later. They can report that information. So it is something that we do see on an annual basis.
Okay.
But once the maintenance plan is put in place, it's a negotiated, revised. The process of revising it is negotiated, and the city can't say, like, either we know we've had a storm and you need to fix this stuff, so we're going to do that, or we don't think that this should be on there anymore. This is a reoccurring annual bill that you have to pay or something like that. There's no, you're basically entering into this contract now, and that's pretty much what it's going to look like. Is that fair to say?
I think so. I think the applicant is making a commitment at a minimum to do the repairs set forth in the plan. I would need to take a closer look at the standard contract language to see how we would handle a substantial change in the plan. And I can certainly do that.
And then I think an interesting question or to understand is the county assessor in evaluating sort of tax rebate available, not rebate, but discount reduction. Correct me if I'm wrong, Marnie, but they don't necessarily themselves review the maintenance plan to try to equate the amount of money that's being put into the maintenance plan versus the reduction in property taxes. It's that they don't use that as a criterion, right? Is that correct?
I don't believe that they do use that as a criterion. They are simply looking at the current property tax rate, and then they are calculating an adjusted rate based on the presence of the Mills Act contract. And again, there are annual adjustments that the county does on those property tax rates. But they're looking at it from a completely different sort of calculation. They're not looking at how much money's being invested into the property per se.
Okay.
Could I also make a comment that at the site visit, I believe the applicant made an aside. I don't know if it was said so that everyone heard it, but I believe there has been a change in ownership recently, and therefore the new purchase price on which the property tax is based is obviously going to be higher than it was before. Therefore, I don't think the city should worry about a big loss in property tax sharing in this case, because there has been this major change in value of the property based on the recent sale.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Is there any other questions of Marnie? Okay, if not, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is the applicant or applicant's representative here to present to the board?
I am, Mr. Chair, and we bought Verge Carmel, which was the old Sundial Court and Bungalows. And
excuse me, David, I just want to have you state your name for the.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm David Fink. I'm the owner of the business Verge Carmel, an aubergine restaurant, and Esperanza owns the real estate. And we have a long-term lease on the property, and we're responsible for all the repairs and maintenance, as a lot of the leases are in Carmel. And we purchased the property in 2002 and renovated it and restored it. And the building's going to be 100 years old coming up this decade, and it needs continuous work, much more so than we have in our annual maintenance budget. So the Mills Act is a way to incentivize owners to continue to reinvest in their properties to keep them in historic properties in great condition. I will say, I do appreciate you worrying about tax revenue. Since we've opened the property, we've quadrupled the transient occupancy tax to the city by over 4.5 times from what it was originally doing. So we're paying quite a bit of taxes to the city, and I do agree with the board member who said that the city should remain fairly whole on what the old property tax was in the past, because we pay quite a bit of taxes. But also on the call is architect Barlow, and Chair Dyer, you had some questions about the rehabilitation of the windows. He's actually a Mills Act registered architect, so he can probably answer that better than me.
Okay, great.
Yeah, my name is Christopher Barlow with Wald, Runke & Dost Architects. And as actually David mentioned the comment to me in advance, and essentially what we're looking to do with those windows is try to improve the thermal performance of that. So there's an evaluation process that goes through that. It could be improving thermal performance, as you know, could be as simple as replacing window seals, augmenting those. That would be on the low end of that, to evaluating the windows and seeing if they could accept a second pane of glass. There's a protocol that's been put out by Architectural Resources Group that's pretty good for that process. So we'd follow something very similar to that to look at the performance issue here. But the bottom line is that it's not a wholesale replacement. It would be incremental thermal improvements to the windows.
I think I brought it up originally was, you know, that obviously it's just a big change. If you add insulated glass to windows, it does change the character of the windows themselves, which would not be really matching in kind, but I'd be interested to see, like you say, the Historic Resources Group's evaluation of how you could do that within the secretary standards. Okay.
Sure, Dyer. For us, I mean, I think initially just, you know, living with the property for almost 20 years now, all the window seals need to be replaced. So the hinges are all loose. They need to be tightened up. So a lot of the windows have some rot or wood damage, which need to be caulked or repaired and then repainted. You can see especially the south side of the property has a lot of wood rot and some window damage up on the top windows. So those need to get addressed pretty quickly.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any other thing you'd like to present, or is there anyone else in the public? No, sir. Is there anyone else in the public?
I'd like to ask a question of Mr. Fink. It sounds like you were the individual who was responsible for putting the Sundial Lodge on the Carmel Register. Am I correct?
That's right.
Could you give us an idea of why you chose to do that so long ago?
Sure. Well, my brother is a restoration architect in Los Angeles. We grew up in an 1848 plantation house in Virginia. We love old buildings. It's a significant building, and when we bought it, we saw that a lot of the things that just some facade changes had been done, and the owner before us hadn't necessarily taken the best care of it. So we thought it was a historic resource. It should be recognized that way. We knew that we weren't going to ever try to change the facade or try to increase the height or anything else. So we just thought it should be on the historic resources and recognized that way. And we thought it was an important building in town. So we just did that voluntarily, and we thought it was a good idea.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions of the applicants? Of the board? Okay, anyone else in the public wishing to address the board in this application? Okay, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for discussion. We'd let you go first.
I mean, I'm happy to go first. I think I was really interested in a lot of the information we presented, and you know, the team did a great job presenting it to us. I would say, Mr. Fink, I think, you know, looking at the history of what you've done with this place, pretty awesome. I mean, it's obviously such an important resource in the town. We've got the bandwidth within the city to accept the Mills Act partnership, which is really what it seems to be. And I don't think, looking through all the stuff, I don't see anything that looks out of the box, you know, outlandish. It all seems to be in line. And I mean, I think that this would be a really great Mills Act partnership to enter into, and I would really highly endorse it, because there's not just because of the importance of the resource, but Mr. Fink obviously has done a lot, believes in the process, and I think he's probably a good partner, and the people he works with probably good partners going forward. So I would say that this is probably a fairly safe bet. So I would absolutely endorse this program.
Thank you, Jordan. Who else would like on the board to comment?
Well, I support the resolution to enter into a Mills Act contract and echo what our Jordan has just said. I think it's a fine project and deserves more recognition.
I agree. I think this is a no-brainer. Everything that both Jordan and Catherine have said.
I agree also. It's a significant building, and it's an old building, and it needs a lot of care. And I think it's everyone's benefit, the city's benefit, that the building gets maintained.
Thank you. And I agree. I think it's an amazing historic structure in town, and old structures of this significance really take a lot of money to maintain and rehabilitate them. And it's perfectly suited for a Mills Act contract. It's the Mills Act contract being one of the few incentives for historic preservation a city and a government can bestow, and I think it's worthy of that. So I'd entertain a motion for the resolution.
So I motion that in regards to the resolution of the Historic Resources Board, recommending that the City Council enter into a Mills Act contract with Esperanza Carmel Commercial LLC for the property located on Monteverde 2 northwest of 2nd. It'd be approved for a Mills Act partnership.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Board Member Croman,
Yes.
Board Member Galtieri,
Yes.
Board Member Hall,
Yes.
Board Member Pomeroy,
Yes.
Chair Member Dyer.
Yes.
And motion passes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay. We now go on to, we have no more public hearings, but we have the director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not a long update today. I do want to announce, and I'm excited that the RFP for the context statement update is out on the street right now. It is live, and so we are expecting, we're closing that RFP. All submissions are due by the 7th of February. So we got a couple weeks to go. And then we'll be going through those, and we'll be taking a professional services agreement to the first meeting in March to the City Council for approval. So once we get that approved by the City Council, then we'll begin work. So that's going to be the 1st of March, 1st of March. I was looking at my calendar. The 1st of March will be when the contract would conceivably be approved by the City Council. So that's really exciting. There's been some conversations at the City Council level with respect to meetings going back in person. I don't know if everyone's been following that or not. There was potentially going to be the first in-person meeting in February for the City Council, but just given the Omicron virus and the logistics, the city administrator did make the decision to hold on that decision. So February will not be back in person. The City Council did say, though, that when they decide to go back in person, all of the other boards and commissions have their own choice to make. So it'll be a consensus among the boards and commissions what they want to do. There's no requirement for everyone to come back right when the board does, at least, or the council does, at least initially. I just want to let you know that, I think I announced this before, Marnie was recently promoted to principal planner, which in the planning series is the highest you can get. And that is wonderful. Yep, definitely worth the applause again. And what that means is that Marnie's going to be and should be taking on some additional duties. Really, this is continuing her growth professionally, trying to get her into the director's seat at some point in her career if she chooses to do that. So giving her more responsibility. One of the things we've lined out in her work plan is to essentially take over lock, stock, and barrel of the Historic Resources Board. So she will, starting next month, she will be effectively me in these meetings. So all the annoying interjections that I make to, say we need to do this, we need to do that, that's going to be Marnie now. So you won't have to deal with me. I'll still be around for the first few meetings. I will probably only watch via YouTube, just so that you only have Marnie and you don't have to worry about me accidentally opening my mic and saying something because I can't help myself. So I will extricate myself from the proceedings for the next couple months. I will be around though. But Marnie's going to do a wonderful job. So she's going to be reading all the staff reports, doing all the edits, running this meeting. So if you have questions about quorum or anything like that, please work with Marnie to that end. This is going to become her hearing body. It's a good experience for her. She knows and cares a lot about historic resources like all of us. So I think it's a great fit. And then the last thing, I have a little quick update that I just want to share with you. I've mentioned it before. We undertook a project to scan and digitize our historic property files. We have 5,000 plus files here in City Hall that every parcel has these folders with stuff that date back to the early 1900s in a lot of cases. But it's paper and it's dying here in our office. And when people want to make an appointment to look at these files, whether it's a homeowner or a real estate agent or a contractor, they have to make an appointment with our staff, which means our staff has to sit with them in chambers for an hour at least, because files have a magic way of walking out the door on their own, unfortunately. So we undertook and started taking on this project to digitize them all, so you can click on our GIS map to get there. And I'm glad to say that we just finished the testing phase, and it actually we've proven the concept, so it works. I'm just going to show you really quick. You guys can all see my screen here. Mm-hmm. So this is our city's GIS map. It's been up on our website forever. It's always just been, you can click on a parcel, and really all you could get was your zoning and your APN. Well, we're updating the GIS map. We're going to be putting a bunch more information into this results block that comes when you click on a parcel that pulls up this results block. But the first thing we've done is we've proofed this concept. So you click on the link and you're magically taken to this online file cabinet, basically. We've broken up those hard copy files into two piles. One is the original, all the documents. So think like 8.5 by 11 documents or things written on a napkin or whatever. And then large media files, so 24 by 36 plans. So all you do is you click on this, you give it a second to load up, and you come up with a nice thumbnail preview here on the left-hand side, but you can see how good quality the scanning is. And the wonderful part about this is this file, when we did it, had 208 individual documents in it. So they're all in here. The quality is really good. And the great part is the way they were scanned is you can search for any word in any document that was scanned. So I see the word remove in here. Let's just use that. But you can search for like fence or whatever you want. So you type in a word and it'll search every document. So it even pulls it out of this one here that was handwritten and typed and everything. So it's really, really exciting. The ultimate goal here is that all the files that are in my office, all 50 plus file cabinets, 5,000 plus files, will be scanned, digitized, safely stored in this repository where people can find them just by clicking on their parcel 11 o'clock at night. I keep saying 11 o'clock at night in your pajamas eating ice cream. You can get them anytime you want. And the files then, when they come back to my office, are boxed up and sent to be securely stored in Iron Mountain, where it's temperature controlled, it's securely stored, it's fireproof, all that stuff. So these files, they still exist. We're never going to get rid of them because they date back to the inception of a lot of these parcels, but they're going to be stored somewhere safely. And they're going to be more easily accessible online. So I'm really excited about this. We just last week started the conveyor belt moving. I sent out 25 bankers boxes of files. This one you're looking at represents a small batch we did of 12 individual files to prove the concept, get it all the way through the system. And that worked as of 2 weeks ago. So we started the conveyor belt working last week. We're going to do about 25 boxes every month and a half. So I'm really, really excited about this. I wanted to share that with you. And that's all I have, unless you all have any questions for me.
I wanted to ask you, how will that information be used, let's say, at the local history room at the library? What will happen then? Let's say a researcher comes in. Is there anything additional that would be available if they're needing more than just looking at it online? Would there be a way to ask for that information?
Absolutely. So the wonderful thing about Iron Mountain is we've been using Iron Mountain for years. They're a really well-qualified, high-quality document storage company. All the boxes, when they go out, I don't have one in my office, they have an RFID tag on them and a barcode. So everything's barcoded, scanned. It documents exactly which files are in there. So if someone says, hey, I want block A, lots 5 and 7, all we have to do is make a request online to Iron Mountain, and within 24 to 48 hours, that box is back here for us. So it's really easy to retrieve.
And what about the city council minutes of their meetings? Where are they? Are they in Iron Mountain too?
That is a great question. I don't know because that's the city clerk. I don't know where they keep those. I know that they have them online somewhere, but I'm not sure where the old physical ones are at. I would assume so because they're our company. They store all of our records. So I would assume that they're there, but I can find out and I'll send you an email and let you know.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. And what is the estimated time to actually get it all scanned?
The estimate is about a year to a year and a half, because it's a lot of files and it takes some time. I mean, I'm doing 25 bankers boxes every month and a half or so. But
Great.
the nice thing about it, the way we set up the system, is that essentially the company that's doing the scanning for us, as soon as they scan it and it becomes electronic, it goes into the back side of this electronic file cabinet, and then instantly the programming, it's available on the front side. So every lot in town on that GIS map has that link right now. But if you click on it and it's not one of the 12 lots that we've done so far, it's just an empty box, basically. It just says there's no files here. So as stuff comes in, it's just going to instantly be populated into the system.
Great.
Excellent.
You want information on a property, check first on GIS, and then if it's not there, then you can go down to City Hall.
Exactly. Yeah. And once we get that first box, the first big push of 25 boxes out there, I talked about it last week on our Friday letter in the blog. I think we'll start selling it harder and harder as we get more files in there.
Is there currently any vetting when someone requests a file, or is there any vetting, or you just make the file? Anybody can say, I want to look at this file, and you grant them access, so there's really no difference in who can access these files. Is that correct?
That's right. It's all public record. Yep.
Okay.
And that's we tracked this when I made the pitch to the city council to get the money, because this isn't necessarily a cheap project. It's about $130,000 project. We were spending 10 to 12 hours of staff time every week to sit with people and go through these, because we would have about 10 of these requests in a week, every week.
Great.
Money well spent.
I think so too. And I think it's going to show us what we can do with technology moving forward. GIS maps are amazing tools. You can do permitting, you can get way more information out of them than what we're currently using it for. So I'm hopeful that this is seen as a benefit, and then next year we can pick another sort of technology project to grant access and communication with the public.
Okay.
Very impressive.
Thanks.
Great. And Brandon, can you give us an update? We had talked about this before, but having, I think you mentioned Seth Bergstein and Kent Seavey were willing to do some workshops with us and the city, and have those maybe during one of our meetings or a couple of our meetings broken down into different ideas about the context statement or the Secretary of Standards and that sort of thing.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. Marnie and I talked about that today in our one-on-one, actually, because I'm not going to, even though she's going to be taking over the HRB, I'm not walking away from that. I had started to put together something with Kent and Seth before the new year, and then they had something come up, then I had something I had to work on. So we kind of lost the bubble on that. So I intend on getting back on track with that for next month, to have them come and start doing something. So we're definitely on that. I apologize that didn't happen in the last couple of months for you.
Okay, well, it'll be exciting when it does, for sure.
Yeah.
And then could you email us the RFP for the context statement? I'd be just curious about the criteria that was being sent out for these people to.
Absolutely, yeah. And the RFP, it got vetted by the state. So they actually had to review and approve the RFP and make sure that the qualifications were up to snuff with theirs. But I will send it to you. I had planned on doing that not only so you can look at it, but also if you know anybody that, I would put it out on our website. We're going to do notice in the paper 2 weeks in a row. I emailed it out to any historical consultant that we've done work with contractually at the city, just so they're aware of it. But certainly it's a public RFP. So if any of you want to pass it along to someone and they want to take a swing at it, then please do.
Also, Brandon, didn't you have a date that was moved to February for a workshop for builders and contractors and the public?
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about doing something in January. The city used to do an annual, I don't know what they used to call it, but essentially like development process meeting. And it's more of a technical meeting. They talk about updates to building code, fire code, processes for submitting building permits. It's really building focused, technically focused, but it is open to the public. And it was a beneficial meeting they used to have every year with architects and builders about what's going on. So I wanted to reinstate that. I had hoped to do that this month, but just given where we were at with public meetings and city council wanting to wait. I thought it was the better part of valor to push that. So right now we're tentatively looking at mid-February for that. But I'll keep everyone posted, and we'll do a lot of good public noticing once we pick a date for that.
Thank you.
Okay. And just any other questions of Brandon, first of all? Hearing none, future agenda items. I'm just noting on my calendar, I think it's February 28th rather than the 29th, the special meeting. Is that, because I don't think there's a 29th. That's just a side note. It's a typo, I think, in the agenda I'm looking at least. The next meeting will be Monday, February 28th.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, was that a question?
I was just.
I see Marnie nodding her head. Yeah.
I'm looking at the agenda and it just had a misprint. So I'm just clarifying.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Okay. With that, I think we're done with our meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
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 Have a good one. Bye-bye.